I can see Sandra, I can see Chrissy. Where is our friend? Is he in the sofa? Of course, he's in his natural habitat.
Of course.
Of course. Very good. And you guys are there at the center, which is very, very nice and very kind of you for being there. So very good. So we're gonna have this talk now, for the next 1.5 hours. So we really need you guys stop it doing many, many important things, because you guys have important things to do, and you guys created all of these time, because you decided to come and do and come here together. So let's make sure that it's worthwhile that we are here together. And to be worthwhile, it depends on especially one thing, one thing only, actually, which is our intention. That is really what matters. Our intention for why are we here together, why we're doing everything in our lives. Why intention is important? Because intention is directing our mind. That's what intention does. It's kind of like, what directs the mind to go here or there, to do this or that. But the mind in itself is also the beginning of our actions of body and speech. So everything we do with our body first comes through the mind. And everything we do, well, here, just to be completely correct, so be completely academical, I need to say that there is one part, there's one aspect that is actually, we say, that is not, doesn't go through the mind, which is reflexive reflection. I don't know how to say that. Like, when you go to the doctor and then they do like this, like doo, and then your knee does like,
Reflex.
reflex, exactly. So that is kind of like, that doesn't go through the mind, it's just an automatic reflex, right? So, but these are very kind of like rare in our minds, in our day-to-day lives. So, but that happens. So just to be correct, fully correct. So, but then everything that we do with our bodies in the way of like consciously, that we use our conscious to actually move, to actually do this or to do that, to do this, to do this in someone, that goes through our minds. Okay? So that is important, that we understand that whatever it is going through our minds will direct our actions of body, but also our speech. Everything that we say, even though sometimes we are almost sure that we had no conscience of what we are saying, we were not aware, or we kind of like had the intention to say what we were saying, we actually did say what we said because we were unaware of our mind. Okay? Which happens sometimes. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I was not thinking." Well, you were thinking, but maybe in a different way that you wanted to be thinking in that moment, and then you said what you said, and then you regret, right? And that is exactly why it is so important for us to understand, our intention. So important to be aware of it. So that is what we try to do, before any activity. Have or start to create that habit, that real habit of checking. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why did I come on a Sunday evening, to this place, Buddhist center at the Cove? Or maybe why am I at home and then I decided to turn on the computer and listen to this crazy monk doing blah, 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 like a parrot? Why did I decide it, right? And that is really an aspect of constant trying to check and seeing our motivation. Because normally we really think it's like, oh yeah, because I know, because I want to see this, I want to do this, because I'm a good person and I want to become that. And then actually we go refining that attention. We go slowly and slowly, really checking, That's why it's so important to check again and 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 again our intentions. So just to check, I'm not saying to do anything in the beginning, just check, just observe what is going on in your mind. right? Why am I doing this? Because if we do it now, the moment that we want to kind of like say something mean to someone that is doing something not so nice to us, then we have a little bit more of awareness, and therefore we can start deciding, right? Because that is what the Buddha actually wants us to start doing. The Buddha wants us to have a little bit more of control and decision making and discernment about how we want to live our lives. That is the main goal of the Buddhist path. For us to develop that discernment and that wisdom, as I like to call, that inner wisdom within ourselves, that we can therefore discern how we want to live our lives. Because intention not only directs the mind, directs the body, directs the speech, but it also creates results, right? Because if I say something, or if I say something a bit different, the result is going to be different. If I am very angry, at Jack because we don't have raisins for breakfast, then, he's going to be very maybe, or pissed off with me and say, that monk, he just wants raisins all the time, something like this. But if I say, oh, it's okay, we don't have raisins, life is, it's okay, we can have a banana instead, with porridge. So, then the mind becomes more relaxed, my mind, and therefore the result is going to be a more warm, kind speech towards Jack, right? And therefore, the way that the Jack might interpret that might, why I'm saying might, because we're going to see that we don't have control of other people's ways of understanding and analyzing and experiencing what we are saying, right? But we can, from our side, be completely relaxed and at peace that what we said with the intention of, help Jack not be upset because not having raisins for breakfast, right? And that is the main idea of the Buddhist path, is that what we are trying to do is to really understand and having that experience of a more peaceful, kind, loving mindset for ourselves first, okay? Because if we don't have that, if we don't develop that towards ourselves first, it's going to be very unlikely that we can do and we can help others or we can share that with others. So that is very important that we understand that when we are talking about intention, it is a completely inner experience, right? An individual experience. So if we think that our intention might be to help others, and we think that helping others is making them or forcing them to have a good time and have a peaceful mind and have that, guess what? We are applying for disaster. That's what we are applying to, We are applying for completely frustration, suffering. That's what we're going to do. However, if we understand, and that is why the Buddhist path is an inner path, if we understand how the mind works, how our mind works, and therefore we can understand how we can create, how we can develop good intentions, right? So we can experience for ourselves that experience of a good intention, and therefore having a result that is going to be good as well. So that is the main focus of what we've been talking about for the past 4 months. You guys have been kind of very kind listening to these for 4 months. But the main idea of these tips, for our lives is to understand that what we need to start observing is, if the intention is what is going to talk about the result that we might have, we need to first analyze what type of result we want and therefore adjust the intention for that result to happen. Does it make sense? Are we communicating so far? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody is okay? Please feel free to ask any questions. Do we have new people over there?
You have a very small thermometer. You have a very small thermometer on over here. You have a baby.
We have a baby. Is that Jack? Is Jack's? No, it's not. Because sometimes Jack used to bring the granddaughter, and she was very a baby like this. So very good. So we have a baby. Okay, so baby is gonna be the very small thermometer today. So it's very important that we start to really understand then, Buddhism, what is the main kind of like approach of the Buddhist philosophy and the Buddhist path is really to make us have a good life. That is the idea, right? So for that, we need to check our lives and really understand that from the moment we wake up until the moment we go to sleep, we are all thinking the same thing, which is how to have a good time, how to have a good day, how to have a good life. That is what we are actually kind of like, thinking in our minds. And not how I can suffer, how I can have a bad day, how my life can be bad. Nobody thinks like this. So that is why it's important to understand that what the Buddha did is not that he invented anything. And I'm not here inventing anything. I'm just here talking about what the Buddha woke up to. That's what he woke up to. He woke up to that idea that our minds work with that bare wish from the moment we wake up until we go to sleep, with that wish to be happy, to find happy experiences, and to not have like a bad day, right? And that is not because we kind of like, because the monk is saying that, then it's true. No, just look to your life, what actually, the moment you woke up today until the moment you're going to go to sleep, that is what we are looking for, right? And that is nothing wrong. We shouldn't feel bad about this. We shouldn't kind of like say, oh, I'm a bad person because I'm thinking about how to be happy and not suffer. No, don't think like that. Actually, this is the best thing we can actually do for ourselves, to really develop that wish to achieve happiness. However, and that comes the point, the tricky one, it's how we achieve that, right? How we achieve that happiness, how we actually develop that happiness within ourselves, and how we develop ways to deal with our bad experiences, our suffering experiences, our unpleasant experiences, but not only how to deal with them, which is extremely good already, and Buddhism really focus on that, but let's not forget that if it was just about dealing with our bad experiences, how to deal with our unpleasant experiences and all of that, Buddhism and psychology would be very, very similar, right? But that is not only that. The main goal of the Buddhist path is not only how to deal with these negative experiences, but how to completely eradicate them from arising in our minds, in our lives. That is the main goal of Buddhism, right? That is what the Buddha really taught when he taught the first teachings, the Four Noble Truths, as he said, the teachings when he said about we need to recognize what suffering is and what experiences, unpleasant experiences are. And once we recognize them, we really start to see, oh yes, I can see how these things are not nice to me and they are the ones blocking me for finding the happiness that I want. So where does they come from? Then he said, yes, they have causes. Don't worry about it. Yes, they do have causes. And if you understand and you recognize and you investigate those causes, then there is a way to cessate it, to eliminate, to eradicate them, right? And eradicating these causes, what happens? There is no more suffering, right? If I eradicate the seed, there is no more flower, isn't it? That's easy to see. So that is the main goal of Buddhism. And I say that because even myself, sometimes I feel that we sometimes lose sight of that. We lose sight that that is the goal of Buddhism. And therefore, as my dear Bob says, It's not for the faint of heart, right? It's not for the easy, because it's going to be a long path, but it's also going to be a joyful and a very juicy path, as I like to say, Why? Because the really small steps we take towards that ending goal of eliminating the causes of our unpleasant dissatisfaction, suffering situations, it's going to be 10 times, thousands, billions, zillions times better than actually the relative, temporary pleasures that we experience right now. Okay? So that is really important that we keep in mind, because the temporary pleasures that we have, they are very seductive, right? They sell to us that you need to have them. The more you have them, the happier you become. And guess what? It doesn't. It doesn't happen like this. This is just really, really a wrong idea that we believe, and that's what we chase in our daily lives. So that's why I said that the reason why for us not to find that happiness that we want the moment we wake up until we go to sleep is because we are being cheated. We are being cheated, thinking that it is in the temporary pleasures that we're going to find that happiness. And guess what? It's not there. Whose fault is that? Well, right now is mom and dad and the family and the government and this and that, everyone's else, right? Besides our own mind. It's everybody's fault. It's like, Sandra blames Brian, Brian blames Sandra, and then Jack blames the raisins and all of that. We go blaming everybody else, because of our suffering. However, that is why we need to start really transforming and looking into our minds to check. It's just a checking, asking the right questions to see if this is true, right? If these temporary pleasures that we seek, like burritos and tacos and then Netflix and Instagram and having a partner and even having family and even having a job and even having that and all of that, if they can bring the happiness that we want. Okay? Am I saying that those things don't bring us happiness? Yes, that's exactly what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying that as long as we see that these experiences, they can only have a temporary pleasure. They can only give us a temporary pleasure. As long as we see that, then please enjoy the chocolate cake as much as you can. Okay? That is the idea. Because otherwise, as Lama Yeshe, one of my teachers, he used to say, otherwise life would be very boring, right? And actually, life as a human being is beautiful. It's just an incredible experience that we can have so many beautiful experiences, but temporary ones, right? And that is fine. That is wonderful. As long as we know, as long as we see things for what they are, right? And that is the real deal in Buddhism. We start to understand, once we start to ask some questions and to analyze our own experiences, that maybe the way things are and the way I am wanting things to be are very different. Maybe the way, things actually exist and the way they arise in my mind, the way the way I choose to see them, the way I perceive them, very different. Because if we actually are honest, and we are here in a safe space, so I can be honest and I can start, really say, how do I say, I am in say bad things about us, like really if we really think about in our own lives, we are creating in our minds these ideas that we would like the chocolate cake to never finish. And we would like that person to never go away. And we would like that job to always be in a certain way. And we would like, that situation to continue. And we would like the experience, that place, those vacations in Hawaii to never finish, right? And this is exactly the reason why we get frustrated. Because we don't see things as they are, we create the causes for a lot of dissatisfaction in our own minds. So understanding that is the core of the Buddhist path. The Buddhist path, we will have to say, it's mainly two-folded, right? That means there's two aspects. One is that, is recognizing how we are experiencing things in a mistaken, in a I don't want to use the word wrong, but it is in a wrong, mistaken way, right? And because of us having those mistaken perceptions and views about our own lives and about how things should be and about experiences and about people and about objects, guess what? We create the causes for us to experience mental states that disturb our peace of mind. So whatever we see, in a way we experience, like for example, I don't want this person to ever leave me. I want this person to love me forever and they're gonna be here for me forever. Guess what? That's not really possible, right? Not because you are incapable of being loved forever, but actually is because that person will eventually pass away, or will eventually see things in a different way, have a different perception, and might not believe that you will bring them happiness anymore. And therefore, they might walk away or go. So, when those things happen, what happens is that our minds become very disturbed when we don't have the experience in the way that we want. So the experience not happening in the way that we want them to experience, even though the experience happens in a certain way and we are inventing a different, completely hallucinated, completely impossible way of existing, of happening. We believe in that impossible way, we grasp to that impossible way, and we want that impossible way to be the truth, right? And therefore, when impossible way doesn't happen, we become angry, sad, right? And therefore, those experiences start to bubble and disturb our peace of mind. And guess what? That is our main life, the story of our lives. That's what we are doing almost all the time. Right? We are creating impossible ways for people to exist, impossible ways for objects to exist, impossible ways of experience to exist, impossible ways of places to exist, and impossible ways for us to exist. Right? And because we see ourselves in these impossible ways of existing, therefore we suffer. There's frustration, there is attachment, there is anger, there is, all of the nuances of these different negative emotions arising. And guess what? Because we said that intention is so important, when we have the intention to have something in an impossible way, guess what we are doing? We are already turning our minds, turning our bodies, turning our speech into ways that is going to create a result of dissatisfaction, right? Yes, Bob, you have a question?
So when the negative emotions arise,
Mm-hmm.
then what?
Then what? Very good. Very, very good. That is very good question. I was going towards there, so we're going to go towards there. So what happens is that when we have those kind of like mistaken ideas of how things should be, we should be, you know, I have to be in this way, I have to work, to like talk like this, I have to act like this, I am a mother, I am a father, I am a son, I am a brother, I am a sister, I am this. I start to really like limit myself, you know? Then all of these limitations makes those kind of like frustrations between reality and those impossible ways of us of existing. Therefore, these negative emotions come up, these disturbing emotions, and they disturb our peace of mind. So here the Buddha taught mainly two aspects for us to deal with this. One is what we call a temporary antidotes for us to deal with these negative emotions, right? So what are these these antidotes? So mainly these antidotes, as we've been talking, especially when we talk specifically of these negative emotions, we already talk about anger, we talk about attachment, we talk about pride, we talk about low self-esteem, we talk about so many things. I was trying to go through all of the teachings that we gave, you know, these 4 months, and we talked about so many things, and we went a little bit more specific in each of them. But on a general sense, all of these negative emotions, the way to use it on a temporary level to alleviate them, you know, to make them subdue and become less in our mind so we can live our lives, is to first identifying them, recognizing them as disturbing. If we don't see them as our like a not friends, that they are not our friends, we're not going to do something about them, right? If we are kind of like seeing them as good, like I don't know if our friend that one day when I was there, she said, but it's good to feel angry, you know? So it's, if we still see it in this way, we're not going to want to use an antidote to get rid of them, to eliminate them, right? To decrease them. So the first aspect is to recognize them. And for us to be able to recognize them is not just being aware of what is going on in our minds. It's actually learning about their negative qualities, right? And the main two factors that we need to see or observe for them to be seen as negative is first recognizing their disturbance, right? How they disturb our minds. So then we need to look into our bodies, look into our minds, looking how we are in that moment and see how we are agitated, you know? How the body is agitated, the breathing, the jaw, you know? Or even when we are not anger, but when we are kind of like attached, we have that almost that, you know, that feeling of like, oh, I need this, I need that, you know? That idea, it's also not really nice. It's also disturbing in a way. Even though, you know, we romanticize that and we think that butterflies in the stomach is what we need to feel in order to find love, you know? But that is disturbing, actually, if you think about it. If you have butterflies in your stomach, must be very disturbing if you think about it, you know? So it's very disturbing in that sense of that your mind, your body, and even your speech is disturbed. So it's not a peaceful, relaxed, right, aspect of our minds and of our experience. So that is the first recognition. Recognize them, and then recognize that they are actually disturbing you. And because they are disturbing your mind, they are disturbing your body, they are disturbing your speech, and therefore you are acting under the influence of these negative, disturbing mental states, and you are making a mess when you're under their influence, right? You're saying things that they are not the best, you're doing things that are not the best, and guess what? You are creating the habit. You are literally creating neural pathways in your brain for you to experience those emotions, those disturbing emotions, react like that again and again and again and again. That's why, you know, when we start to get old, you know, we don't need to be as old as Bob, but we can get old. And then we start to get old, we start to see how we are in those kind of like loops of like, oh wow, here I go again. Oh my God, I'm here again. Oh no, I'm here again, and again and again and again. So these is very important for us to understand that the disturbing emotions, they are not only giving us that bad experience in the present moment, but they are creating the causes for us to experience that bad experience again in the future, right? For us to have that bad experience in the future. So this is very bad. But the second thing that we need to see and to observe is whatever negative mental state, disturbing mental state we have, it is going to be a complete hallucination. What does it mean, Calden? What are you talking about hallucinations? Well, if we really start to observe that, actually, I shouldn't get angry at that person. That person is not doing that because they want to hurt me. But then I need to start observing that the anger that I'm feeling towards that person is trying to convince me that that person is the bad person, is the bad guy, the bad girl, right? Is creating and literally projecting and like decorating, as Lama Zopa used to say, decorating that situation in a negative way, saying that person is bad, that person has always been bad, that person does this, blah, 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 blah. All the vomiting that we do, when we are in an angry mind. So if we start to realize those two things, whatever it is the mental state, so let's say it is attachment, so we are seeing that person as beautiful, amazing, and this person, if I have them close to me all the time, I'm gonna be happy, and forever, so it's gonna be like this, so, or, oh yes, when I go and then I'm gonna have the pad thai and the pad thai is gonna make me happy and forever and I'm gonna be like this, or, oh yes, when I go to that vacation, I'm gonna be so happy. Oh, when I get that promotion, when I get that job, when I get that thing, when I get, the new car, the new iPhone 27 or whatever it is, the number now, when I get that thing, that's what I start to create. So those creations, they are what we say hallucination, right? And then, of course, we're going to have some of us that say, no, I never do that. No, I'm completely okay with things how they are. I don't actually have that. Well, just check, right? Because I'm not saying that it needs to be so exaggerated like that, but even in a very subtle way, in the way we want our coffee to be or our breakfast with raisins to be, we create those needs that if they are not there, happiness cannot happen, right? We can't be like in peace. So therefore we become slaves, chasing those things again and again. And guess what? The more we have them, the happier we become? Not really. No. Actually, the more empty we become, the more we feel that there is something else. And that dissatisfaction just continues again and again and again and again and again. It's easy to see it. It's very easy. So Buddhism is trying to make us real, as like realistic approach of life. That is what Buddhism wants. Buddhism wants us to cut those completely hallucinated ideas and perceptions and projections that don't create in any way benefit for us. Of course, someone might debate and say, well, but if I don't have that, I'm not gonna like move, I'm not gonna get out of bed, I'm not gonna get a job, I'm not gonna get a family or anything like that. Actually, the less expectations you have, the freer, the more free you are, or more freedom you have to actually enjoy those decisions and those experiences in ways that they are not kind of like creating suffering and creating attachment and creating those kind of like, those ideas that we have that, oh, it's normal that those situations will happen to us. It's only normal that suffering and frustrations and all of that will happen if we have those mental states. Buddhism is saying we don't need to. And I completely, for me, I gave a little talk on Friday here in my parents' a neighborhood or well, city, village, whatever. And it was talk about the time. You know, they asked me to talk about time and past and future and how Buddhism sees time. And I was talking about that idea of if we don't actually really check, you know, our minds, we will have to, unfortunately, have to go through big wake up calls, as we say, for us to start recognizing that we actually don't need those things to live. We don't need, and I don't believe that's necessary. I don't think that we need to go through a big sickness, illness, someone dying in our lives, something like bad, really bad happening for us to wake up for the way we are perceiving our lives, right? We don't have to. And that is why, and then someone asked me, I think also is not needed, but we don't have like places or we don't have that option of different perception. And that is why I say it is true. And that is why I feel that, you know, having that, what we all are doing here, to really be here and talking and asking and kind of like, you know, thinking about those things already changes our own minds. But can you imagine if all of us would have heard and kind of like listened to this when we were young? How this would have changed what we were pursuing, what we were trying to achieve and to be in our lives, right? Like Bob, you know, is old now, and then he can see now he's using his time to kind of like really transform the time he has, which is going to be a long time still, you know, to actually do that. But can we all imagine how it would be different if we would have that understanding, right? So that doesn't mean that, okay, now we already done all of this, we are habituated our minds, now it's gone, we don't have any choice. No, 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 no. Because that mental happiness, it happens now in the present moment. So each moment we can actually experience that peace of mind, that happiness, that, you know, that choice that will bring us towards that. So that is why it's so important that we pay attention and we understand that the negative, disturbing emotions, when they come up, we need to be aware of them. We need to recognize them as bad. We need to recognize we are projecting them. And then we need to use antidotes, right? And antidotes here are minds that will counteract those negative, disturbing mental states. So positive mental states that will kind of like bring, why they are called positives, we already talked about that as well. Why a mind is called positive? Because it doesn't disturb the mind. So we are not disturbed. We are not having zzz like this. But not only we are not having like this, but we are also feeling nice. We are open, kind, loving. We are open, having our minds and our hearts in a peaceful, like loving way. And especially is looking towards others, is thinking about others as well. Why? Because it is part of our existence as a human being to be interdependent with others. So when we are just thinking about ourselves and ourselves only, our minds become narrow and we believe that this is what's going to bring me happiness. And just like thinking about my happiness, my reasons, my, you know, and my car, my this, my that, actually makes our hearts like this. And instead of like making us, you know, relax and open and, you know, then it actually tightens ourselves. So opening the heart towards others and including them as humans, you know, that want to be happy and don't want to suffer, that brings us in ourselves, in our own experience, a happy feeling, a happy experience. So those mental states are called positive ones. So that is why when we're going to kind of like, you know, talk about anger, we need to talk about what we call, you know, things like patience, compassion, love, kindness. Why? Because anger is a mental state that is telling me that if I don't get what I want, I didn't get it, it's this person's fault, and me, and me, and me, and me, and me, just me. So what is patience is thinking, well, if maybe if I don't get it, someone else can have it, and I hope that they can be happy with that. Or maybe this person also wants to have that, and let me share with them. I don't need to have it only by myself. Maybe this person needs more than me, and I'm very happy that this person might have it. Or maybe like I want to kind of like really help this person to have it, because in the process of helping this person, I'm gonna find happiness. So all of these mental states really start to create those positive experiences for ourselves. So that is when we start to really exchange, as we say, really exchange those mental states of negative, of, anger, attachment, and all of those disturbing mental states with these antidotes. Right? And guess what? The same way that the more we kind of like get angry, the more we kind of like habituate the mind to get angry, the more we actually practice patience, love, and kindness, the more we habituate the mind to actually be kind, patient, and loving. Right? So it works both ways. The mechanics of the mind works both ways. It's not like, So this is the main way, as we say, to deal and decrease those negative emotions in our minds. But they are temporary. This is a temporary way. Okay? Using antidotes in this way, they are temporary. They're very important, and these should be, in some ways, the beginning of our spiritual path, and then especially our Buddhist path, needs to be on what we call developing positive qualities and decreasing, our negative emotions from our minds. Training, like we go to the gym, now we go to the mental gym, with positive mental weight and then kind of like dropping and letting go of the negative mental weight we have. Okay, that is the like basis of that. However, remember, that is extremely important, and that is very, 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 very useful for our lives. However, Buddhist path is not only about that. Buddhist path, as I said in the beginning, it is about eradicating, eliminating completely the causes for that suffering to arise. What it means that I don't want to have to be like, paying attention to my mind all the time to check if I am under the influence of negative emotions, right? I don't want to have to be on the alert all the time and checking if like, am I attached? Or every person, every situation, especially people situation, because that's when we really get, like popcorn. Those situations, I don't want to be kind of like be worried about it or be having to take care of them all the time. I want to just be with those people without any worries. And for that, we need to eliminate the causes, right? And the main cause that we need to eliminate is our wrong view about how things exist. Is that really misunderstanding the way we believe that things are, right? That was what creates those mental negative emotions to arise. So without wisdom, without the development of this inner wisdom that sees things as they are, that really focus on reality, let's say like that, we won't be able to eliminate the causes. So the Buddha said, we need to develop both. We need to develop those antidotes, temporary antidotes, and we need to develop, a long-term goal of elimination and completely eradication. Eradication is a good word. Does it exist? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Eradication of those sufferings and causes of suffering, right? If we don't get that, if we don't do that, we're gonna be like, like as we are in our daily lives. It's like we have a plate, we take a plate and we go, we make it dirty and then we clean again, and then we make it dirty and then we clean again, and then we make it dirty again, we clean again, and like this, but with our minds. Our minds got a little bit uplifted, and then we're like, wow, life is so good, and da da da, and I got very excited because everything is happening, and then something's like, and then we go like, that's what I call the roller coaster, right? And then we go up, 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 and then something happens, and then oh yes, this is so good, and then I cannot sleep, and then I'm like depressed, and then I kind of like get worried about this and that. Then I don't have peace of mind. So in order to make sure that this completely is eliminated, so we don't have these ups and downs, that we don't have to deal with these negative emotions, we need to eradicate this wrong view, this misunderstanding, this misconception, right? And that is mainly based on the way we see how things exist. And the way we see how things exist is that we see that they are permanent. We see that they are without any causes. They just pop, like, not even like popcorn, but like something that just pops, exists out of the blue. And we think that they have what we call self-existing, or existing by their own characteristics, existing by their own nature type of existence. Okay? So what does it mean to that things are permanent? That's easy. We can all check how we are all the time concretizing, inventing words, making things concrete, and permanent. Yeah? It's like really we are projecting into everything, everyone, every situation, that permanence. It's hard for us to actually observe that because we say, no, I'm not doing that. Well, just check, especially when something good is happening, right? Because when something good is happening, we have that tendency, even in the back of our minds, that I don't want this to finish, to end. Even though we know, but we don't want to. And also on a negative sense. That is very important. In a negative sense, we also, especially when we are in the low tides, in the low mode, when we are feeling blue and bad, we really believe that that feeling is going to stay with us forever, or we're going to be like that, right? It just really drops us, and it kind of like makes us believe that this is like this, and my life is horrible, and it's always going to be like that, So we need to check that permanence that we are projecting. And once we see that we are doing that, we can actually start observing and asking ourselves and say, really? Really is like that? Because things change all the time. Look at the day. We have the sun, and then we have the moon, and then we have the sun, and then we have the moon. We have, like, if you just observe nature, nature is such a good helper for realizing impermanence. Because that's what nature is, completely impermanent, right? The seasons changing, the sun changing, the weather changing, the clouds changing, right? Everything's changing. And then we have beautiful flowers, and then they die, and then, and then we have beautiful snow, and then it melts, and then that's it. Just go, well, not in Florida, but you guys got the idea, So that is what normally it happens. That is such an important. I remember, I think Susan, she asked, I think I can see you over there in the side. I think you asked once about that, about like going in nature and things like that. And I think the most beautiful thing about nature is about that, about seeing impermanence and really helping us to go with that flow of impermanence, right? Accepting it and really, as I like to say, diving into that, right? And allowing ourselves to actually allow impermanence to be, right? And not try to hold. It's almost like trying to make a dam, of like, no, I don't want the water to go, I don't want this, but it's always going to continue flowing, right? So that aspect is one of the main causes for all our sufferings to arise, all of the attachment and anger. Attachment only arises because we believe that characteristics will stay forever, therefore we want all the time. Like, in that sense, attachment makes sense, right? If we see in this way. If we believe that things will continue with those qualities all the time, then of course I want them all the time. But guess what? They change. And it's not because they are bad, it's not because you are unworthy, it's because it's their nature. Right? And that is very important that we actually truly understand. Is their nature to be in the as just cause, like just flowing, just continue, temporary changing. And sometimes things change in bigger terms of kind of like longer periods, like you think about our own lives. They sometimes can, my brother's wife, she has a grandma, 104, right, years old, amazing, and she still walks and do things and lives by herself, amazing, very inspiring, right? But even that 104 years, it's going to finish at some point, right? And we have shorter kind of like, moment by moment changing as well. Our bodies are changing moment by moment. Our emotions are changing by moment by moment. Like things are changing, but we don't believe, we don't see it, we don't want. And that's what we need to start asking ourselves and checking and investigating and allowing that impermanence to just be. Okay? So that is the first aspect. And then the second one is that things don't exist without a cause. We believe that, when something bad happens to us, we just say, why is this happening? What have I done? Well, guess what? You created the causes and you came up with the conditions for them to come up, And that is a very hard one for us because that is the law of karma in some ways. That's what karma means, intention, right? So that is why I always start with talking about intention, because intention, as I said, is the one that is going to direct us to have a good or a bad experience. But normally we are not aware of our intention. Therefore, we normally don't understand why we are having a bad experience. But I just wanted to help, and now this person doesn't talk to me. Well, check really if you wanted to help or you wanted something else, right? And that is hard for us to actually check because we are not aware of our intentions and our, the why we are doing things. So that is the reason why things exist or happen to us in ways that we don't understand why. But we are creating those kind of like experiences by believing, that things don't have a cause and effect relationship. That whatever we do doesn't have a result. And especially not only what we do with our speech and our bodies, but especially with our mind. So that is so important for us to understand, to really check that cause and effect relationship and understand that in Buddhism, we're going to say that is not only what we are planting in this life, right? So you don't need to know what you did in past lives, if there are past lives or not, because you just need to know that the way you are, what you're experiencing right now is the result of your past actions. And we can see that with our own experience in this life, right? If you had an idea about you when you were growing up and we were young, and you really thought that like, oh yes, because I need to be the good boy, the good girl, and all of that, and I start to hold on to that idea, right? So then everything in my life, when I went to go to university, when I went to find a partner, when I have to do a job and all of that was contaminated by that idea. Does it make sense what I'm saying? And therefore, the results we are experiencing is because of those ideas that we were holding on about ourselves. Right? It's just a cause and effect. There's nothing wrong with us. There's no kind of like idea that we are bad people by nature, by kind of like, we just have wrong ideas about ourselves. And then we just bring it on with us. We kind of like cling to it, and we kind of like put it in our mental backpack, and we leave it there, you know? That is why it's kind of like sometimes very heavy. And that's why sometimes we have a new experience, but we don't see it as new. We are just coming with that kind of like, and we say, oh, I had that experience. And then we put, the way we saw it in the past, and we put it there and say, oh yes, it's exactly like they saw. It's just gonna be the same, so I'm gonna just react the same way. Don't even say I already know what's gonna be the end. Okay, we don't love it, and then we go. We do the entire Brazilian drama in one moment. Like that. So that is the real reason why we kind of like, we don't have that understanding of cause and effect. We have 10,000s of thoughts a day, but some of them we decide to make it concrete, right? So that's why we always talk about impermanence first, because then we make concrete that thought and we hold on to it, and then we keep coming, like going and reacting and, responding from that concreteness, therefore having the experience of the same result again and again and again and again. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Are we communicating over there? Yes?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. So that is very
Somebody
important.
wants to ask a question.
Oh, yes? Okay, great.
It's me.
Oh,
Tal.
hey.
What you describe, I think, if I'm understanding it correctly, when we identify cause and effect within our own lifetime and in our own behavior and mindset, that to me, that's Western psychology, which can be very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But even after you're self-aware, you've developed self-awareness, and there are patterns that one can't explain, or events that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yes.
where karma comes in. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. Well, I understand your point of saying that, yes, when we see the cause and effect in one same lifetime, it doesn't look like it is karma in that way. But actually, if you think about it, there is no beginning of that habit that we experience in this life. So it's not that we started in this life, right? Actually, we already have been habituated with that from behind, and that is already karma. Karma is everything in a way, right? But
Right.
some things that we don't cannot explain, like the cause and effect relationship in this life, then it helps us to understand, like through the lenses of understanding karma, right? Understanding that even though we might not be aware in this life of that cause, it doesn't necessarily mean that we haven't created that cause, right? Because I don't
Right.
remember what I've done yesterday, so how can I say that it was not created, like before? Does it make sense?
Yes, yes. So at least when you're identifying it in your present life, you can address it, right? You can address
Yes.
it in your practice and in however you want to remedy it.
Yes.
But I guess what's the best stance to have when there are patterns or events that no matter how you address them, they don't seem to be remedied. They just keep happening over and over. So is the best is do you just think that this is just karma, it's ripening, it has to exhaust itself, and I'm just going to do the best that I can?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I
Is
think
that the best way to go about it?
yes, I really like really good question. Sometimes people really ask me as well, is just like, oh, I have this like strong kind of like depression or strong thing that keeps happening to me again and again, and I can't get out, right? And I always say is that what I've been explaining before, these two methods needs to be there, right? One is the antidotes in the certain way of like, putting positive mental states, and in the case of karma is what we call, the purification, right, of the karma. So doing purifications, really thinking, I might not have done that, like in this life. I can't remember, that I killed someone. I can't remember that I killed an animal or anything like that. But I'm gonna purify because if I did, I really regret that now, right? And we do that with the different mental states that we create about lying, about like, you know, on Tuesday we're gonna talk about all of these different kind of like karma aspects. So that is very important that we really do that. But we need to have also an understanding, and like Kandrala Rinpoche, one of my teachers, she talks about that. If we don't understand what we are talking about now, about how things exist, that also karma is not inherent, is not, you know, existing without our mind, you know, like labeling it and checking that. There's no such thing as a fixed inherent karma. There's only cause and effect, right? So if there's only cause and effect, it means that if I change the cause, then the effect will change. So I need to really work on changing the cause, right? So that is why it's so important that we do purification practice, that we do an accumulation of positive mental states. So these will be but based on that wisdom, that inner wisdom, right? So we have to have that as the understanding of it, so we can actually work with these purification practices, right? When I go back to Florida in November, I think, or December, I can't remember when exactly we decided to do it. We're gonna do 1 day of only these purifications and positive mental states practices. We're gonna do these, you know, as really strong to really put that as a way to transform and to eliminate those negative tendencies, right? But just thinking this is karma doesn't help. It doesn't help, right? It doesn't help because then it doesn't create that change in that aspect, because like saying it's just karma, it doesn't, we are not talking about cause and effect. We are just saying, oh yeah, it's the result. Yes, it's the result, but what do you want to do in the present moment with that result, right? So is that discernment, that wisdom in the present moment to transform that experience for the next moment. That is the idea, right? Like what, as I was saying, we have the potential and the present moment to transform each moment as a moment of bringing us to our like wish to find happiness, right? It's not that in the future, it's not only in the past, it's in the present moment. So we need, and then that's why I said these two things needs to be together, that understanding of reality and that understanding of cause and effect, right? So these two together really, and then knowing that this is going to be a slow process as well, right? Because we have habituated our minds with different ways for a long time. But then having patience, so then we use the temporary kind of like antidotes, right? In the first time, we just use kind of like patience, kindness, love, compassion towards oneself. And then, you know, these will decrease a little bit, and then we can do purification practice of really regretting what we have done. But I don't remember what I've done. Don't worry, just think about it, you know? Just think about that. You kind of like, you know, you have created aspects that like maybe had created causes for your suffering and suffering of others. So think about it, you know? So, and then you kind of like really develop that really regret and say, oh, I'm so sorry that I act like that because I was confused. But now I have wisdom. Now I'm going to make sure that I don't do it again, right? So then I'm going to make a strong that like wish to not do it again, right? So that is the idea. Yes, yes, I saw it. Thank you so much.
Like, how do you explain sort of a random, seemingly random tragedy, like someone gets struck by lightning or they get in a car accident? I mean, you saying that that's also cause and effect, that the person somehow brought that onto themselves?
So that is very, very important that you use the right, correct wording here. It's not that they are deserving that. We are not saying that. I'm not saying that they deserve. I'm not saying that, you know, they kind of like brought to themselves in the sense of like willingly, right, with a wish to experience that. But karma is saying that it is cause and effect, that we cannot experience something if we haven't created the causes for that, right? And maybe the cause was not the direct same result. It means like, oh, someone is shot, you know, by someone. It doesn't mean that they shot someone in previous life, they created that, right? But they created the causes for that to happen, because otherwise it would not have what we call that relationship of cause and effect that we have in our lives, right? Everything is cause and effect. You cannot have an apple tree if you don't plant apple seeds, right? So then randomly, or like random activities would make life impossible. So it would mean I would just plant apple tree, an apple seed, and I can have randomly whatever it is, right? We don't think like that with an apple seed because it makes sense that an apple seed will bring an apple tree. But then when we don't use that same logic, when we say something about, someone being in a car accident, right? Why? Because, well, how this person has created the causes for that. Well, they might not have created the cause to be in a car accident, but they created the causes, maybe, in different lifetimes or even in this life, to not have any more life, like their life finished, right? What we say life is in Buddhism, it's positive mental states, right? It's kind of like we need to accumulate certain positivity in order to sustain our lives. And then that ran out. It's hard. I know it's hard. It's not easy to understand. And I know that it's not like clear for our understanding, because we normally go with judging. And karma is not judging. Karma is not fate. Karma is not deserving. Karma is not, they kind of like, they created in the sense of, willing. Why? Because of the first thing we started saying today. Nobody wakes up and says, may I suffer now? May I have a suffering day? Whatever we created, the causes for what experiences we had, and we are having, is because we believe that action, that speech, that thought will bring us happiness. So that confusion is like someone that, like, it's hard sometimes with other circumstances, but someone that is with a drug addiction, they believe, right? But us, that we don't have the drug problem, we are not kind of like, confused by that drug, we know it's no good. But guess what? It doesn't matter how much we say to that person. It doesn't matter we bring them to another, it doesn't matter until that person comes up with that understanding by themselves. So it's kind of like that karma, right? It's our own mental states that create the results of life that we're going to kind of like experience. So for example, we don't have we have what we call collective karma, but we are not saying that is the same karma for all of these people, right? It's just similar karma. So, that's why sometimes, like now we had this horrible air accident with Air India in India, that like people died, but 2 or 3, I don't know, 1 person survived. So we think that is random, right? But in a karmic way, we're going to say, this person didn't create the causes to die now. Right? How? We don't know. We can't know. Because karma is cause and effect in an unlimited way. It's like the matrix of everything. Right? It's the matrix of everything. It's like every situation has a cause, and every situation has a cause. So every situation so for example, for a tree to be born, to kind of like, arise, it needs a seed. But it not only needs a seed. So a seed needs to come from a previous tree, right? And then a previous tree, and then a previous tree, and then a previous tree, blah, 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 eternity, right? And then the soil. Where does the soil come from? From cause and condition, and cause and condition, and cause and condition. The water, from cause and condition, and cause and condition. So everything is like that. So we can't, with our limited minds right now, see that matrix that would make sense that cause and conditions right now happen, but it's not without a cause. So it's not random. Yeah? So that's why we say that studying karma, it's a very hidden kind of like, teaching. Only when we have the mind of a Buddha, when we are free from all of these confusions, these wrong views, we can see everything. It's like, you know, it's like AI. We see, we have everything, we understand everything, you know. It's like that. We understand, and I look at a, you know, a Jack, or I look at a Susan, and I say, I understand how Susan is Susan now. All of the things that Susan done, you know, in the past lives, why she's like this. So now I can have the knowledge, the wisdom to help her achieve, you know, freedom from suffering. So that is the mind of the Buddha. That's what we want to develop, that wisdom. Because right now, and I was thinking about that today, because yesterday I got a little bit down, you know, I kind of like had some things happening, like people I saw suffering, and I felt, wow, I cannot help these people, right? Really kind of like really trying and talking and all of that, but those pains were so strong, and I felt like, wow, I cannot do anything about this pain. And then I said, well, actually, right now I can't do maybe eliminate completely their pain. But if I become a Buddha, I'm actually going to have the knowledge and the wisdom to help them. So that's what I want. That's what I really want, because I know, because, you know, I experienced in my own life, due to the kindness of my teachers, what it means to be like that, right? Like Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to say to me, oh, I really wish you could do this. And then I would go, and it would be hell realms. It would be like hell. But I could see that going through that process that Rinpoche told me to do, make my mind better. You know? So he was doing what? Helping my mind to get better, helping my mind to get better, helping my mind to get better. So I know it is possible for someone to help me to do that, and therefore it's going to be possible for me to help others to do that. And that's what I want. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Yes? We went into a different side here, but I like it. You know, so that is for me so important, that we really develop that trust and say, okay, because even here, you know, you guys been come for 4 months to this blah, 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 and you can see already how this has changed, you know? Not because of what Kalden is doing, but because what you're creating within yourself, right? Because what you are creating within yourself with your own understanding, with your own wishes, with your own kind of like what you're using, and the more you use those knowledges, you know, that wisdom in your daily life, wow, the more you transform it, right? So it's not about waiting. It's not about doing something different. It's not about changing your life. Just use those. Just use those antidotes and check how it goes, right? Use that wisdom of seeing how things are, right? So that is the idea. So let's go to the last type of like how things exist and how we see things. We see that things are self-existing. What it means that they have qualities, ideas, characteristics from their own side. What does it mean that? Well, when we see a beautiful burrito, we believe that the deliciousness of the burrito is in the burrito. Or when we see a person, we believe that those qualities we are seeing in that person is coming from that person. But then we go, you know, we go out to the restaurant, and then someone is going to come and say, blah, I hate burrito. Burrito is horrible. You know, I know there's crazy people in life, but there is these people. So, you know, they say that. So that when you say, I love burrito, burrito is delicious, and they say burrito is no good, burrito, I hate burrito, that is the proof that you need to see that that burrito doesn't have the characteristics that you are seeing in it. Because if it had, that person that hates burrito could never not see them. Does it make sense what I just said? Yes? It would have to see it. Because if the characteristics were coming from the side of the burrito, the deliciousness would come from the side of the burrito. From the burrito would have those like inherent self-existing characteristics of deliciousness. Guess what? Everybody would have to share that experience. But it doesn't happen like that. Right? So we are imputing. We are with our minds imputing. Maybe it's gonna, let's see if are you guys hearing me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, because the light went like beep, and I say, ooh, the Wi-Fi is gonna go.
Yeah, I saw that too.
So what happens is that really our mind really creates, imputes those characteristics in that person, in that burrito, in everything. But we don't see it like that. We don't see that there is this imputation. We believe it's coming from the aspect of the object, and therefore I need the object in order to experience the deliciousness of it. Yes? Does it make sense what I said? Yes, Jack?
No. Yeah, I've never met anybody that doesn't like a burrito.
I know, I know, I do, I know, I know. I have
Bad
people in my
example.
life, they're very crazy, and some of them are like this. They don't like chocolate, they don't like burritos. I know. I
Oh, okay. I'll take it.
So that is the thing that is an absolutely game changer, let's say like that, for our lives. If we start to see that the characteristics, the qualities, the aspects that we are seeing in that person, in that experience, in that object, in that situation, do not exist in the way I am perceiving it. They don't. If they would, everybody would have to do it, to see it in the same way. But guess what? If they don't, so what we do, we try to find people in our lives that share the same view so we can make sure that we are correct. So that's what we do. It's like, do you see it? Burrito is delicious. Yes. So then we just hang out with people that like burrito, like Jack. He only hangs out with people that like burrito. So then we start to make that idea really the truth. Look, reality. It is good. Burrito is good. And it's not because I'm saying it's good, it's because it's in its characteristic, in its ingredient. When you go to see the menu and then you see deliciousness is there, It's like that. No, it's not, but that's how we perceive it. That's how we really see it, right? Yes, Bob?
So when somebody says something that's really offensive, whether it's directly to someone or to someone that you know and love, whatever's going on,
Mm-hmm.
you then impute how you see that person who made that really hurtful comment.
Yes.
And you impute that you see that person negatively.
Yes, exactly.
And you're telling me that's incorrect.
Yes, it's incorrect in the way, it is incorrect in the way that we are imputing that, okay? We are imputing that, and then we are seeing that these, like, remember, it's not only the imputation, it's also the other two things that we talked about. We impute that, and then we believe that it happened without any cause. So I didn't impute that. It didn't come from me. It's coming from the side of that person, and the person is like that. And not only the person that didn't come from me, but is permanent like this. Right? So that is very mistaken. Right? However, if we would impute that this person is acting in a negative way and see it that the negative aspect is being, relative in that situation. Let's say, oh, a good friend of mine came and said, this person is a horrible person, And then I said, wow, in that situation, in that moment, that person act in a way that is not positive for this person. If I would see it in this way, I take out all the Brazilian drama that I normally create out of it, right? So the imputation in and by itself, it's not the problem. It's believing that the imputation is coming from myself, is believing that the imputation is not coming from myself, and is not, the person is not that imputation. It doesn't happen without cause and conditions. And that imputation is concrete. That is the problem. Right? So all of these qualities in and by itself is the problem. Believing that they are in this way. Okay? Yeah. Just a moment. I think Joe here at the online, he raised the hand, so we're gonna go, and then I go to you. Okay, dear? Joe, you wanna say something? You wanna ask something?
Yes. Is it better to stay away from this person that makes you angry, or is it better to try to control your mind and
So
fail?
Very good question. It depends. Buddhism doesn't have a "it is the only way" type of answer, right? It depends on you knowing your mind and your limits. And that is the big question, right? So if you can control your mind and not allow yourself to actually get angry, because you know that getting angry is disturbing yourself, is creating the pattern for you to get angry again, and is hurting, creating the result for hurting and saying things, bad things to that person, maybe don't engage in that, right? We say that we have many different ways. You can become like a piece of wood. You can walk away. You can say, I need to make pee-pee, or I have to go to somewhere. I need to eat burrito. I'm sorry. You can do whatever you think it is needed in that moment. Okay? That is called a temporary antidote. The best antidote is the second one that you asked, trying to control and understand your mind. If you develop that correct view, then whenever you meet with that person, that view will not come up. You understand? Of that person being angry. That's what we want. We can't avoid people all the time. So that's what Buddhism is saying. We can't avoid people all the time. But when you cannot avoid, okay, you use those kind of like temporary antidotes, right? But when the best is to make sure that that wrong view doesn't happen, and therefore there's no anger and other situations that are making you negative emotions to arise. Does it make sense, Joe?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, you at the same. Yes.
So basically, it's all projections. We, each one of us has all these projections on objects, on people, on situations, on life, etc., etc., etc. Right? So it's things that we have formed since that we know since we're children, from things we observe from adults or whatever, and we trying to create an identity, right? Because creating an identity is so important, no? Because you think you know yourself by what you think you are, and
Yes.
that's what you hone your whole life, you know.
Yes.
But it's
Yeah.
to find out that it's all projections of things that are not real,
Yeah.
that it's just really.
Yes, it's very beautiful what you said, because that's it. We are just creating who we are. That's what we are doing, right? And what Buddhism says is that who we actually can be is a Buddha, which is a mind that is free from confusion and a mind that is full of good qualities. That's it. So that is what we can become. So that is why when we do kind of like, like meditations or visualizations, we are aspiring to be who we can actually be, which is a Buddha, right? And not the idea of becoming who we can be as well, like, a doctor or a person and all of that, but we'll create suffering for ourselves. So we kind of like transform that mechanism of, projecting ourselves into, instead of wrong ideas, correct ideas. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yes.
that is the idea that, and then, because why we would do that? Because these will help us to be happy and achieve our wish, our innermost wish. That the reason why we woke up today, to be happy and not suffer. That's what we want, right? So the Buddhism is just a path towards accomplishing that inner basic wish, right? And doing that by understanding our minds, transforming our negative emotions, transforming our understanding how things exist, and therefore coming closer and closer to how things are. That's it. Easy peasy. We could have done this in 3 minutes instead of 4 months. But that is the idea. So that is why we need to kind of like, so that's what is important before we finish, because today we didn't have discussion group. I'm so sorry because I talked too much. But you guys made very good questions. That's good. You guys asked very good questions. So that's why it's important consistency, right? It's important that all of you that have been listening to this, that you've tried to familiarize yourselves more and more and more and more and apply to your mind. right? Apply to your daily lives. And not in a blind faith way because the crazy monk said. No, please don't do that. But do it because you want to try out. Be curious about what we are discussing here and try to apply to your mind. Wait a minute, I can see that I'm getting frustrated and I'm getting angry. If I apply here what Kalden says, the antidote, and try to observe if this mental state is really good as I think it is, oh, actually it doesn't. Look at my body, look at my mind, look at how I am. Oh, yes, it's true. What can I do here? I can just practice patience, compassion, kindness, love. Oh, look at how my experience is when I am actually practicing these things. Use your own experience as the thermometer, right? To check if these things actually work for yourself. This is the most important thing. And then the more you do it, then you start to see, wait a minute, but I can see that I'm projecting that this person is like this, that this situation is bad and all of that. Let me check if it is really like that. You know, you go with these two aspects, the end, the kind of like the temporary antidote and that long-term view. And then you go one of the other, one of the other, one of the other, you know? And then you go ta ta ta, and then the more you do it, the easier it becomes. The clearer the mind becomes, the easier it becomes to live. The like life becomes better, just like that. So try to use that, and that is why we say that in order to help us, we need consistency, but we need to also put our minds into the right direction. And that's why we call about Buddhism, we talk about refuge, right? Refuge means we are taking refuge, or we are putting our attention into things that will help us to achieve that. Huh? So for that, we need to kind of like check what is a Buddha, what is the Buddhist mind? Oh yeah, I can achieve a Buddha, can I? Oh yes, you know, because I said about that last week, and I kind of like have to find this too, or we can do maybe a meditation on, you know, on the nature of my own nature is pure, so I actually can achieve that. Right? I can transform. I can eliminate these wrong views. I can eliminate these incorrect ways. So that kind of like I start to familiarize myself with this. So, you know, I need to study, I need to contemplate, I need to meditate, I need to discuss, I need to do those things again and again and again and again. So then, you know, I'm gonna try to see, okay, so what is Dharma? Dharma is that idea of the Buddhist path or the Buddhist teachings that will help me to do what we just described today. Decrease the negative emotions, you know, temporary, and eliminate completely the causes. So what do I need to practice there more and more? So I'm gonna take refuge in that. And then I'm gonna take refuge in those that can like support me, you know. I'm gonna kind of like look for people in my life that can help me to support that view, right? So that is what we can do. And that's why, you know, you guys gonna have this incredible possibility on next month, you know, now in October, that Venerable Tendron is coming. You know, Venerable Tendron is coming back, and she's gonna talk about that, how to develop a daily practice that can help us, you know, anchor that knowledge and that wisdom and those antidotes in our daily lives. Okay, because we're going to India and Nepal, so I like Venerable Tendron very, very specially, because Venerable Tendron is incredible. You guys very good karma, create good causes to have her over there in Thubten Kalden, you know, in Florida. So she's gonna come and talk about that, and that is so important. You know, we discussed about that, how she can talk about, because then this becomes more present in our daily lives. Like, oh yes, I can. If I see the benefits, if I really like see that I can do that, then I will do it, right? So that's what you guys like. I really encourage you to do that in the next few weeks, you know, and to really try to like develop those mental states. Okay, so I think that's it. Any other questions or commentaries or anything like that? No. Dun 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 dun. Okay, so that's very good. So
Want to say
this is
have a great and blessed and safe trip, Kalden.
Thank you so much, dear. Yes, we are very excited about the trip. This is gonna be the first one that we are doing in Thubten Kalden. So they're gonna be the, how do you say, the rat labs. You know, they're gonna be the rat labs of our pilgrimage. And it has been great to be with 4 months with you guys. You guys gonna receive in your mailbox the patient's certificate because you had to be with me, all of these. And then I come back in November, so it's just a little gap, you know. So it's just a little gap, so we can go and see His Holiness. We're gonna see the Dalai Lama. We're gonna see some teachers. We're gonna walk the mountains to find. They don't know the people going to the pilgrimage, but we're gonna go and Rinpoche hunting. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna try to find Rinpoche's reincarnation. We're gonna go looking all the little babies, 1-2-year-old babies, and check if they kind of like, you know, they are the reincarnation of Rinpoche. So we're gonna do that, and then when we come back, we're gonna do, you know, on Tuesdays, we're gonna start already on the 4th of November. Okay, 4th of November, we already start teachings. And then Venerable Amy is gonna come as well. Wow, 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 wow. Venerable Amy comes also in November. You know, we created this program for you guys to be entertained and receiving proper teachings without, like, you know, not this blah blah blah. And then I come back in November for more blah 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 until the end of the year. Okay. So thank you so much. It has been extremely, extreme pleasure. We still have Tuesday teachings and Thursday teachings for those that want, and the meditations on Monday and Wednesday. Okay, this week, and then thank you so much for your kindness. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for being here. You guys don't understand that I can only be here because you are here, and not only this, but especially because you want to learn about, you know, transforming your mind. Never lose that. Never allow someone to not you know, to take out from you your wish to transform and be a better human being, because that's what the world needs desperately. Okay, so doing that, you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping the world. So please, please, please continue. Okay, so, and I see you very, very soon.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you, thank
Thank
you,
you,
Venerable
thank
Venerable.
you,
Kalden.
thank you, thank you,
Thanks, love you.
thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.